So now we're going to be talking about scouting and selecting your hunting spot. Scouting is a critical part of hunting, and basically what it can do is make a huge difference between how successful you are. If you haven't scouted and you don't understand anything about the area you're in, you may not have any success at all unless you just get lucky. So what you want to do is you want to look for areas that have food, water, and cover. You also want to consider terrain, the direction of the wind, and your access in and out of the area. So to start out, what I'd recommend doing is looking at a map. Look at the area you're hunting, assess the topographical feature of the map, and then find water. Okay, so you know that deer need water, and they also need cover, and they also need food. So if you find those three things, you might have a place to go physically scout. You want to use Google Earth. That's another great thing you can do as well to find out, am I looking at a lot of hardwoods? Am I looking at a lot of evergreen trees? What's the land like? Is this going to be farmland? That's very important. You want to have an idea of the landscape you're going into before you physically scout that area. Once you get into the area, what you want to do is potentially set up trail cameras. But the only way you know if you should be setting up trail cameras in most cases is by stepping into the area and looking for deer sign. Deer sign can be deer scat, scrapes, rubs, and deer beds. So scat's self-explanatory. I would pay almost no mind to old, dried up scat that doesn't give an indication if a deer's been here recently. Scrapes are where a deer has used its hooves to uncover bare ground, basically like dig into the ground. And what they'll also do is rub their antlers or chew on a twig hanging down. Oftentimes a deer will just kind of go like that or chew on it a little bit, and then they'll make a scrape right below that. A rub is where a deer has used his antlers. Basically, rubbing off the velvet is one thing they do, but also use it to mark their territory. So if you see a tree that's been rubbed down by antlers and all the bark is gone from that tree, you have deer sign. Lastly, you're looking at deer beds. So a deer bed tells you that is where that deer comes to lay down, and it's left behind signs of its presence like impression in vegetation. But here's something to note. Just because you found a deer bed, just because you found a rub or a scrape, just because you found something doesn't guarantee that deer are going to be there, okay? If a scrape or a rub was made a week ago and it hasn't been touched, it may no longer be active. I know, Captain Obvious, right? Just keep in mind that you're looking for fresh sign, not old sign from years past. All right, so now we're going to talk about tracking and following deer. So deer tracking can be frustrating if you don't know what you're doing. And even if you do know what you're doing, it can still be a challenge. If you understand the way that deer behave, you understand their habitat, tracking is a little bit easier. The first thing you're going to want to do is look for fresh tracks. And that's what I have on the screen right here. You're looking at deer tracks right there where a deer has clearly stepped in the mud and made an imprint. Now, you don't know how fresh this is. If the dirt is all dried up, it's probably old. If it's a fresh track, it's going to have probably a more clear imprint, and there's not going to be debris all in the track. So if you're looking at a track like this, it looks like there's debris in it. It doesn't really look that fresh, so we're not going to be worrying too much about it. You look at the track, look at the way the deer is going. That's really all there is to a track. Now, by looking at a track, you may be able to find more signs, such as those scrapes, those rubs, or deer beds. But a deer track is a good way to get on deer and find exactly where they're going and kind of get in the area to find that other sign. So how should you be moving when you're tracking a deer? Let's say you're following tracks like this. You want to walk slowly and quietly. Um, you may feel like you're moving at a snail's pace, but that is the best way to track. You're going to be able to notice things better than if you're walking fast. You won't have to be worried about tripping over things. You'll be able to stay quieter, which won't alert the deer in the area. Their senses are amazing. So before you even know they're there, they're probably already running away. So at all times, you need to be as much like a ghost as you can be. Stay very quiet and move very, very slowly. The idea is eventually these tracks are going to move into an area where you're going to find a scrape, a rub, or something else. Now, if you find one track and you decide to follow one deer's track, it may lead to nowhere. But if you find a pattern of tracks, many tracks headed in the same direction, that is a good sign.